Okay, so I'm guessing you're here because you're thinking about leveling up your life. And honestly, who isn't these days? I bet you've probably heard of 75 Hard, right?
Yeah, it's everywhere.
It is. It seems like it's really popular, but also two-a-day workouts, a strict diet, absolutely no slip-ups.
Yeah.
It all seems a little, how should I say this, intense?
Oh, yeah. It definitely requires a certain mindset, I'd say. It's all about really pushing your boundaries and embracing that whole no excuses mentality.
Which is admirable for sure, but I don't know if it's always realistic for everyone. That's
Well,
why I'm thinking you'll be interested in what we're looking at today. 75 Soft.
okay.
Think of it as 75 Hard's more approachable, but still pretty effective. Cousin, I guess you could say.
Interesting.
And we're using an episode from the SocialWick Podcast as our guide here.
Okay.
They bill themselves as a pretty serious resource for people trying to find success on Instagram. So they really dug into the details. They did take themselves pretty seriously, though. So we'll keep things a little more down to earth. So I guess right off the bat, what is 75 Soft?
Well, right from the start, the SocialWick hosts emphasize that 75 Soft is all about building sustainable habits.
Okay.
So it's not about that short-term intensity. It's about creating positive changes that actually last.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So it's all about making self-improvement feel less overwhelming and way more achievable.
Exactly. And that's really where I think the beauty of 75 Soft lies. It's a 75-day program, just like 75 Hard, but instead of being so restrictive, it acts as more of a framework for improving different areas of your life.
Oh, interesting. So we're talking physical health, diet, maybe even mental well-being.
Exactly. It's more holistic, not just about hitting the gym 2 times a day.
Gotcha. So they're basically taking the core principles of self-improvement, that discipline and consistency, and they're just making them more livable.
Exactly. And that's honestly where the real magic happens. I think the SocialWick hosts pointed out that 75 Soft is about proving to yourself that you can follow through.
So it's less about punishing yourself and more about building self-trust.
Absolutely. And it's recognizing those small wins you make every day and letting them kind of build momentum.
I like that. And speaking of building, the SocialWick hosts really hammered home the importance of consistency, didn't they?
Oh, they did.
Which makes sense, right? It goes hand in hand with that idea of not overwhelming yourself.
Right.
It's those consistent, manageable steps that actually lead to the bigger changes over time.
And consistency is just so crucial for building habits. I mean, think about it. Every single time that you follow through on one of your 75 soft tasks, you're strengthening those neural pathways that are connected to those habits. So the more you repeat them, the more ingrained they become.
Wow, so you're literally rewiring your brain for success.
Exactly. You could say you're building a muscle, but it's for your willpower.
I love that. So we're building that willpower muscle day by day. It's fascinating, right? The SocialWick host even talked about how 75 Soft could be a stepping stone to something bigger. Like it could prepare you for even harder routines down the line.
That is a great point. And it all ties back into what we were just saying about those neural pathways. When you're consistently doing those positive habits, even at a softer level, you're basically teaching your brain how to embrace discipline and self-control.
Yeah.
So then later on, when you decide you want to maybe try something harder, you've got this solid foundation that you can build on.
So it's almost like a choose your own adventure for self-improvement.
Exactly.
You can start with 75 Soft, get comfortable with the process, and then decide, okay, am I ready to level up?
Yeah,
It's about progress, not pressure.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly empowering for someone who might be a little bit intimidated by the all or nothing approach that 75 Hard has.
Right.
75 Soft allows you to test the waters, build some confidence, and then you can decide, okay, how deep do I really want to go with this?
And speaking of dipping your toes in the water, the SocialWick podcast really focused on that practical side of 75 Soft. But there's one thing I was thinking about, something they didn't really get into. What about the mental and emotional benefits of this gentler approach?
That's a fantastic point. It's not just about ticking boxes, right? It's about how those boxes are impacting your overall well-being.
Right.
Like, for example, think about the difference between failing at a super strict diet and adjusting a more flexible one. Just psychologically, how different those two things feel.
Huge difference. Like with 75 Hard, one slick up and it's like, ugh, I ruined the whole thing.
Right.
But with 75 Soft, there's that room for those off days, for life just kind of happening.
Exactly.
And you could still feel good about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Like it just seems way less discouraging in the long run.
Absolutely. And just imagine what that does to your self-esteem.
So you do.
With 75 Hard, it's easy to fall into that self-criticism trap if you're not perfect all the time.
Oh, for sure.
But 75 Soft, with that built-in flexibility, It encourages self-compassion. It's progress over perfection.
It is.
And that kind of shift in mindset can be so powerful.
It can.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you're giving yourself permission to be human.
Right.
So instead of connecting self-improvement with punishment, you're starting to see it as self-care.
Exactly. And reframing it like that can be transformative. It takes so much pressure off.
It does.
And you can start to approach self-improvement from a place of kindness and understanding.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder.
What's that?
Well, if we zoom out a little bit, it makes you think, what does it say about where we are as a culture that we even need a softer version of a challenge in the first place?
It's a really interesting question, isn't it? Have we become so obsessed with pushing ourselves to the absolute limit that anything less feels like giving up, like it has to be all or nothing?
Right. It's interesting to think about. Maybe 75 soft is a sign that we're starting to rethink how we approach self-care and goal setting in general.
Yeah.
Maybe it means that lasting change doesn't have to be about suffering, that slow and steady can be just as powerful.
Absolutely. And maybe even more so than just those bursts of intense effort.
That's a good point. So for our listener who's maybe intrigued by 75 soft, if they're thinking about giving it a shot, what advice would you give them?
You know, I think the most important thing is to tune in to what you need and what feels right for your life. Don't get caught up in comparing yourself to other people or thinking you have to do things a certain way.
Right.
Remember, 75 Soft is all about customizing it. It's your journey, so make it work for you.
I love that because at the end of the day, self-improvement isn't about winning or proving anything to anyone else.
No.
It's about you taking care of yourself.
Exactly. It's about showing up for yourself in a way that feels good and that supports your well-being.
Yeah.
And if that means choosing a softer approach, then that's fantastic.
It is. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is give yourself permission to be gentle with yourself.
I completely agree.
I feel like we've covered so much today.
We have.
We've talked about the ins and outs of 75 soft, the benefits, even some of the bigger picture stuff.
Yeah, it's been a pretty comprehensive deep dive.
It has. But before we wrap up, I think it's time for that extra little something for our listener to think about as they continue their self-improvement journey.
I love that idea.
We've talked about the practical stuff and even the potential emotional benefits of this gentler approach.
We have.
But we didn't really get into the specifics of what those emotional benefits might look like.
Right.
So here's a question for you to chew on. What could those benefits actually look like in your own life? How would they show up?
That's a great question. Maybe embracing a less rigid approach could lead to a much deeper sense of self-acceptance.
Oh, I like that. Instead of focusing on everything you think you need to fix about yourself, you're acknowledging and celebrating all the progress you're making, no matter how small it might seem.
Exactly. And I bet that shift in perspective could even have ripple effects on other parts of your life.
Like how?
Maybe you start to feel more confident, more resilient when things get tough.
I can totally see that. And you know what else? Maybe that gentler approach could actually be the key to sticking with those goals for the long haul.
Because it feels more doable, less like a constant struggle.
Exactly. If you're not constantly beating yourself up over every little slip-up, you're so much more likely to keep going, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's a much more compassionate and I'd even say enjoyable way to approach personal growth.
I love that. So to our listener out there, whether you're about to embark on your 75 soft journey or any other self-improvement challenge, remember, it's not about perfection. It's about progress, being kind to yourself, and finding what truly works for you.
Absolutely. And who knows, you might just find that this journey leads you to a much deeper place of self-love, resilience, and even joy.
We were just talking about all those possible emotional benefits, with the softer approach to self-improvement.
Right.
It just really gets you thinking how those could actually play out in someone's everyday life.
Totally. And we talked a bit about self-acceptance, but I think we can even go deeper with that.
Okay. Yeah.
Imagine approaching your goals with a lot less rigidity and a lot more grace.
Okay.
Instead of constantly thinking about what you haven't done yet, you're celebrating those small victories along the way.
That shift in perspective, that could be huge, couldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Instead of just always chasing after some perfect ideal version of yourself, you're taking the time to acknowledge and appreciate all your efforts, even the tiny ones.
Exactly. And I think that could lead to a so much healthier relationship with yourself. Instead of being your own worst critic all the time, you actually start to become your own biggest cheerleader.
Yeah, I love that. It's like that saying, progress, not perfection.
Exactly.
And I bet that kind of self-compassion would also make you more resilient, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're not constantly putting yourself down for every little mistake, you're going to be much better at bouncing back from those setbacks.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost like you're building these like emotional shock absorbers.
Okay.
The challenges you face become opportunities for growth instead of reasons to just give up.
I see what you're saying.
And that resilience, that can spread to other areas of your life too, you know?
Like a ripple effect, right?
Totally. More self-acceptance, more resilience. What other emotional benefits do you think could come from taking this softer approach?
That's a good question. I mean, think about how it could affect your overall well-being, right? Like when you're always pushing yourself to the limit, it can lead to burnout, stress.
Oh, for sure.
But if you're putting balance and self-care first, that creates space for more joy, more peace of mind.
That makes total sense. Instead of thinking of self-improvement as this like brutal uphill battle, it becomes more of a journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
And I think that shift, that can change everything.
It really can. So for our listener who's out there and ready to get started on their self-improvement journey, maybe 75 Soft is the perfect place to begin. It's about finding a pace that actually works for you, celebrating those wins, and remembering to be kind to yourself along the way.
I agree. And, who knows, maybe this whole journey leads you to an even deeper sense of self-love, more resilience, and way more joy than you thought possible.
I love that. That's a beautiful thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into 75 Soft. And until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and remember, you are amazing exactly as you are.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And remember, even the smallest steps can create big transformations.